I love conspiracy theories no matter how outlandish they may seem. Most of them are very fun and some of them are very plausible. That's why I'm starting a series where we go through a ton of conspiracy theories and I'm ranking them from S to F tier. Make sure you subscribe because my channel is absolutely tiny and you will definitely not find it again if you don't subscribe right now. Anyways, let's just jump right into it, okay? Starting it off with a banger, we have the Hollow Earth theory. This theory is one of my favorites and it's quite popular, but I don't think people understand the full extent of it. The main thing people think of is Agartha, which is like Middle Earth or an underworld or something like that, which has maybe magical creatures. And while I don't particularly believe in that one, there are some funny parts to it, like people thinking that a certain Austrian painter went down there after World War II. A man named Nak Tanis was the man who coined the crypto-terrestrial theory, which basically states that what we think of as alien encounters from space are actually beings underneath the earth with some kind of, very futuristic technology. And while I do completely believe that the earth is not completely hollow, there are definitely large hollow pockets under the earth like massive cave systems. Scientists have also detected underground oceans as well as water contained within rocks that are equal to multiple times more water than all of the oceans on the Earth's surface combined. Now, I don't really think that there are aliens or dinosaurs or the Austrian painter down there, but I do think that it's possible that something is within those pockets, whether that be microbes or maybe intelligent aliens. There are many legends around the world about human-like creatures coming out of particular lakes, and maybe those lakes have an entrance to somewhere deep below the Earth's surface. I'll be giving this one an A tier because it's really cool, but unfortunately most people who believe in the Hollow Earth theory literally believe the Earth is entirely hollow, so I can't really put in an S for that. I do think that part of the theory is very far-fetched, but don't worry, there will be more far-fetched theories later in this series. But with all the underground oceans and cave systems, it is possible that there is something down there. Our next theory is the Vatican Library of Alexandria theory. The Library of Alexandria was located in Egypt thousands of years ago, and this library was known to have basically the entire world's knowledge at the time. The only way to access this library was to literally just give them more books. So as you could probably expect, the amount of knowledge was ever expanding in this library. The weird thing is, this library was actually completely destroyed and nobody knows who did it, why they did it, or even when they did it. But the Vatican Library in Vatican City, which I would say is in Italy, but it's actually its own country within Italy, has nearly 2 million books, and the majority of them are not accessible. So people think that under Vatican City or within the Vatican City Library, many of the Library of Alexandria books are still kept hidden. Why do they believe this? Because they have a lot of books and they won't tell us what they have in them. Many theorists of the Library of Alexandria Vatican City type deal also coincide with things like the Hollow Earth theory. They believe that maybe magic or aliens is contained inside of these books that are still kept in the Vatican Library. Overall, I'm going to give this one a B tier because it is pretty cool, but it's just books, and they could be cool books, but we don't know if they're actually there. Although the Vatican City Library is massive, like I said, nearly 2 million books, and maybe there's some cool stuff in there. The next theory is the moon landing. Now, hear me out, okay? Do I personally believe that the moon landing was fake? Probably not, but there's a catch, okay? Because it's actually quite possible that the moon landing could have been faked. The two main reasons as to why is, first off, this was during the Cold War, and the Soviets and the Americans were doing literally anything they could to one-up each other, whether that involved, killing certain people, or it involved technological advancements, or even faking those technological advancements. Secondly, JFK said by the end of the 1960s, we would land on the moon, and the moon landing happened in 1969. There's a bunch of reasons why people think the moon landing footage was made, on a set or something. The first reason is you can't see the stars in the footage, but the reason you can't see the stars is pretty simple. The surface of the moon is really, really bright, so they had to set the cameras to only let in a tiny bit of light, which made it so the, darker stars couldn't be picked up on the camera. It's that simple. There's also a video of them leaving the moon, and people are like, how do they get a video of them leaving the moon if they left the moon? And that's apparently because they set up the rover to take a video of them. There's also an image of the moon boots, and they don't match the footprints, but the boots had a cover on them that matched the footprints. But there is one part that people don't really understand, which is the Van Allen belts of radiation. These are belts of radiation around the planet Earth that the astronauts would have to pass through to get to the moon. And people think that the radiation would have just killed all of the astronauts. And from what I could read online, basically the answer was they flew through the smaller part of the Van Allen belts, except for one time where they flew through the big part. So I don't know. They just didn't die of radiation, I guess. All of these reasons could probably be explained, but the weirdest part of all is why we haven't been back. It's been a longer gap from the moon landing to now than it's been from the first flight ever from the Wright brothers to the moon landing. So with all the technological advancements since then, how have we not made it back? Some NASA people in interviews have explained that they need to invent the technology to get to the moon, but I thought we already had that technology. You're telling me over 50 years ago, we had the technology to go to the moon with a computer that's worse than like an iPhone 7, and we can't make it back now. Is the NASA budget too small? Probably not, because they're just giving all their money away to like private companies. And even if it was smaller, the technology is so much better, it should be easier and cheaper to go to the moon. The Soviets were super far ahead in the space race, and then conveniently, NASA pulled ahead right at the end and got somebody on the moon. So for the mythos around this and the plausibility of it, I'm actually going to be giving this one an S tier. And I think the moon landing was real, but there is a great argument for it not being real as well. The next theory is that there is life on Mars or the moon. Like I said, we haven't been to the moon for decades, and there's been a lot of excuses as to why we can't go back. Going to Mars has also been pushed back countless times. I remember people in the 2010s saying it would happen in 2020. Those were like people from NASA saying that we could do that. The best evidence we have are the very strange photos that have been blurred by NASA, like the famous pyramid one. This photo essentially depicts a pyramid, and for some reason, they kept covering this photo up. There was even a NASA whistleblower related to this photo who died under mysterious circumstances. Another really weird part is that photos of Mars have been edited by NASA. You expect Mars to look something like this and look pretty red, but Mars actually looks like this. For years, NASA would just add red to all the photos of Mars. A lot of people think it's to make Mars look less livable than it is. Because yes, in the future, it is possible to terraform Mars and make it livable, but what if the reason that we want it to look so bad is so we don't go there because there's something already there? Overall, I'm going to give this one an A tier theory. It's very, very cool, and there's a lot of weird stuff to it, but I don't think it's quite as good as the moon landing itself. Next up, we have the MLK by the FBI theory. What we do know for a fact is that the FBI wiretapped Martin Luther King Jr. illegally, sent him letters telling him to not be breathing and stuff anymore. On the night of his death, Martin Luther King Jr. was staying at a hotel in Memphis. They had their room for a while before that. They had it reserved. And then at the last minute, MLK and his team got a call that they would need to move to a separate hotel room. The hotel didn't really have a reason to move him. And in fact, the hotel never even made the call. Now, luckily, there was an investigation into MLK's death by the FBI. The investigation was led by J. Edgar Hoover, the same guy who was sending letters to MLK and undermining his reputation. During the 2000s, there was an effort to retrieve the FBI records on MLK just like they did with JFK, but these were denied. Now, James Earl Ray, the alleged assassin of MLK, confessed, but recanted his confession 3 days later, fired his first attorney, and Ray's second lawyer said that Ray had been partially responsible for MLK's death without knowing it. Martin Luther King's son met with Ray and publicly supported that he should have a retrial. Now, years after MLK's death, a guy named Lloyd Jowers later came out saying that the mafia and the federal government had been involved in MLK's death. And after looking through the evidence, a jury of 6 white and 6 black jurors concluded that King had been killed by a conspiracy involving the Memphis police, the mafia, and the United States government. The King family was awarded $100 because that's all they asked for. They were looking for some acknowledgement of what the federal government had done, not money. This is only scratching the surface of what actually happened here, and the evidence is pretty crazy. And there's probably full hour or 2 videos on this already, so go look on YouTube if you want to know more. One of the craziest parts about this is that James Earl Ray allegedly went into a bathroom, climbed on top of a bathtub, and had a perfect angle through one of the windows to MLK from the balcony he was on. The funny part is there was actually a tree between that window and the balcony, which means that Ray could not have shot him from there. However, there was a surprise landscaping event during the night where random people came in and cut down that tree that was blocking the line of sight after the shooting happened. Next up, we have Mr. I'll put his face on screen, Is The Antichrist. I'm not going to put the actual name of his channel here, but you know who this is. And obviously, I have to say this is alleged, very far-fetched. It's a funny theory though, okay? This theory has actually been around for a while, and it was only recently when all of the things about this guy have come out. And obviously those are all alleged, but there's some pretty big evidence for them. And a lot of people have been turning on this guy very recently because of all the things him and his team have allegedly done. The first obvious thing that this guy could be the Antichrist, which is like a false god or the devil or something, is that he's named Mr. BEAS and then T, which he says he got from a random Xbox name, or did he? Or was a mysterious and unknown power hacking his Xbox and giving him that name? There was a random post on 4chan a while back that said that he would rain fire from the sky using his technology, and that his charity is just a red herring, as well as curing blind people could be seen as a false miracle, which is associated with the Antichrist. He's also very materialistic because he says he's going to give little kids like Lamborghinis and stuff. Another thing he did is he fed 10,000 people on Thanksgiving Day, which is double the number of people Jesus fed by duplicating fish and bread and feeding it to 5,000 people. Revelation 13:2 says that the Antichrist beast looked like a leopard. This logo kind of looks like a leopard. Remember, the passage says that it was like a leopard and not that it is a leopard. And this logo kind of looks like a leopard. Revelation 13:3 says that the beast seemed to have a fatal wound that was healed, like a scar. Again, this is the logo. Could that be a scar? 2 Thessalonians 2:9 in the Bible says that he will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, as in curing blind people, making wells. I'm not saying these aren't good things, but these show his wealth and power and are perhaps hiding something darker. The guy has also talked about becoming president, which would give him a lot of power, and seemingly he has some really bad things going on at his company. Now, I've heard this theory before, and I actually just looked it up on YouTube, and I found this video from a couple of months ago before all this stuff about this guy came out. And it also happens to be the last video this guy made on his channel, and all the comments are like, oh my gosh, you predicted it, you predicted it. And it's pretty funny. I'm gonna give this theory like a D tier. I don't believe this at all, but it is a very funny one, so I'm definitely gonna have to give this one at least a D tier, right? Now, next up, we have crop circles, and this is another really interesting one. Crop circles first started to show up a lot in the 1980s. They're essentially geometric shapes flattened into the surface of crops, usually cereal crops like wheat. They appear near populated areas, and in particular near Stonehenge and Avebury, which are two extremely old stone structures with their own conspiracy theories around them. Two English people named Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley admitted that they had made 200 of these using boards and things. Now, people think it's weird that two old people of 60 to 70 years old were able to construct 200 of these crop circles with only crude objects like boards of wood in one night and never being caught. There's no evidence of them walking around. There's no imperfections in any of them. They did 200 of them. They're like 70 years old. It's a little weird. Now, some crop circles have signs of being hoaxes, while some are perfectly flattened into shapes down to the last grain, which seems very difficult to do at night when you can't see them. Some people have also claimed to measure crop circles and have found radioactive isotopes. Other people have felt dizziness, nausea, and other issues a couple of hours after entering crop circles, and some crop circles are folded so well that they are only possible using microwave radiation to kill the wheat in a certain spot. Like some crop circles, the wheat will be growing like this. That's not possible. If you fold a piece of wheat, it's going to break it. Somehow they've been folded exactly 90 degrees and keep growing out like this. Crop circles continue to pop up near certain sites to this very day, and no one has been actually seen making them. Some people have claimed that these are obviously interdimensional aliens trying to communicate with us. And yeah, overall, I'll give this one a B tier because I feel like there's more to the story. A lot of people think that a government paid off these two guys to pretend they were responsible for the circles, when they might not have been. Two 60 to 70-year-old people making 200 perfect crop circles at night without disturbing the grain, to get there. You have to walk through the field to get to the middle of the field. How was there no signs in that? But to be fair, if you used Occam's razor, what's more likely? Two old guys are very dedicated to a prank and really good at it, or there's been a government cover-up of interdimensional aliens. So yeah, I'll have to give this one a B tier. Next up, we have the truth, not theory, that white people aren't real. Because long ago, there was a man named Yakub. The story of white people being created goes something like this. A long time ago, black people lived on the moon. A god scientist got mad that people spoke different languages, and so he blew up the moon. Now, a piece of the moon became the Earth. Are you guys following so far? It's a good theory. Some of the people who survived the moon blowing up and becoming the Earth created the city of Mecca. A while later, a guy named Yakub was born near Mecca. Yakub had a really big head because he had 2 brains, and he discovered how magnets work when he was just 6 years old. For some reason, he figured out how to use magnets to create a new group of people to rule over black people. He was black. He wanted to do that for some reason. I don't know. At the age of 18, Yakub took 59,999 followers and went to the island of Patmos. He then began selectively breeding people who were lighter than others by killing the not as light people. Now, Yakub did this until the age of 150, and then he died, but his followers continued on for centuries. After 600 years, the first white baby was born, and because of all this selective breeding, white people were made evil. Also, if you're wondering where like Indians and Arabs came from, I guess they escaped somewhere through the selective breeding process, and they're only half black and half white, I guess, and maybe half evil, according to this theory. And also, Asian people aren't white or black. They existed somewhere in this story, but they never mentioned them. Now, some of the white people actually wanted to become black again, but instead, they magically transformed into gorillas. Because white people were so inherently evil, they were sent to Europe and lived like savages. And then Moses from the Bible came to try to teach them how to not be bad, but they were still bad, so he blew 300 of them up with dynamite. I'm going to be putting this one all the way up in C tier, even though there's absolutely nothing real about this. Anyways, that's going to do it for episode 1. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to subscribe. My channel is super tiny, but I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.